We used to think that this was something that you needed to take for days and days and days, even weeks to get an effect. Now the research is showing that you can take it an hour and a half before a workout or an hour and a half before you really need a boost, and it has huge effects. But more importantly than that, tremendous effects when you are sleep deprived. It can restore performance to pre-sleep deprived levels. This is unheard of. What is going on here and what am I talking about? Let's go ahead and dive into the details. After today's video, there is a link down below for 10% off of Timeline Nutrition. So if you're focused on athletics, if you're focused on exercise, you're focused on longevity, you're focused on mitochondrial health, you've got to try this stuff. It is what is called MitoPure or urolithin A. Very interesting technology with a lot of cool research coming out and published research surrounding its effectiveness for stimulating what is called mitochondrial autophagy or mitophagy. This is where the mitochondria, where we create energy, actually sort of recycle and become cleaner and more effective and efficient. So urolithin A is one of the only compounds we've seen to actually induce this in research. Very interesting stuff. So that link down below is for Timeline Nutrition. You can drink it in shake form, you can drink it or consume it in a berry powder form that you can add to yogurt, or if capsules are your deal, you can go that route too. So it's derived from pomegranates, but it's not like you can just go eat a pomegranate and get the benefit. So you got to check them out and read up a little bit more about them, see if it's for you, but I think you'll dig it. So that link down below, 10% off using code THOMAS10 for Timeline Nutrition, top line of the description. Now, one of the cheapest, most inexpensive things that you can find that has some of the most peer-reviewed research behind it in the first place is creatine. How does creatine help us with performance when we're sleep deprived? It's not necessarily at the muscle level. Okay, here's what's interesting. If you look at various bodies of research, you find that the physical body is actually capable of quite a bit in a sleep-deprived state. In fact, some studies demonstrate that you don't have a whole lot of a decline in physical performance, actually in terms of like just brute strength and things like that when you're sleep-deprived. What ends up getting attenuated is sort of your mental motor, your ability to push through. And if you look at, Tim Noakes and some of the stuff that he had talked about in the past, he talked about something called central governor theory, right? Central governor theory implies that you have this governor in your brain, and if you train that governor to be able to handle certain levels of pain and stuff like that, you can go further, faster, longer, harder, whatever. So where does creatine come into this? Well, I'm going to start with one study, and then I'll back it up with a few other studies to talk about how it affects the brain. So this study was published in the journal International Science of Sports Nutrition, okay, and they took a look at sleep-deprived subjects. So in this case, they compared people that were sleeping 7 to 9 hours to people that were sleeping 3 to 5 hours. Okay, we're talking crappy, cruddy sleep. Then after cruddy sleep, they gave them creatine 1.5 hours before a workout, before a physical performance. Okay, so pretty much right before. Now, they gave them either placebo or they gave them 50 milligrams per kilogram of body mass or 100 milligrams per kilogram of body mass. What they found is that the sleep-deprived group that had a placebo had a pretty significant drop-off in their performance. They were not able to maintain, their endurance was down, they just weren't able to perform as well. Even their motor skills and things like that were turned down. The creatine groups maintained performance as if they were not sleep deprived. Now, the more creatine they took, up to 100 milligrams per kilogram of body mass, the better the effect. It was dose dependent. Now, I will say from experience and from other studies that the tolerable upper intake seems to be 5 grams, 7 grams per day anyway. So I don't think you need to take more than that. It doesn't just continue on forever. But on the higher end of that. What's crazy though is we really used to think that you have to load creatine. And in some ways you do, maybe for longer term intracellular water volume things. But when you're talking about energetics, you can just take it an hour, hour and a half before a workout and get a benefit. Why is this happening? Well, let's look at some brain research here. There was a study that was published in Experimental Gerontology. It was a meta-analysis looking at 6 different studies, and it demonstrated that even short-term creatine use improved cognitive function, and it improved intelligence and reasoning, and it improved short-term memory by working mainly with executive function. Now, the reason that this happens is creatine seems to increase brain energy. So it's sort of buffering ATP and it's stopping adenosine, which was what makes us tired, from building. Now, adenosine, when it builds, it doesn't just make us sleepy. As adenosine builds, it's slowly shutting off kind of portions of our brain. That's a very high-level colloquial way of putting it. Okay, so if you're a neuroscientist, I know you're going to say poke some holes in that, but it's a very blanket way of saying it. And what this is telling us is that the brain starts filling with inflammatory cytokines. So in this case, like IL-6, TNF-alpha, these are things that would normally trigger certain regions of our brain to shut down so we can go to sleep. Inflammation actually makes us go to sleep. It's not always bad. But if that inflammation is building up, that's going to affect executive function. And executive function is something that is very important while we are working out. Because working out, we think our physical body. And sure, creatine provides physical muscle energy, right? If phosphocreatine levels are increased, we have more explosiveness, more ability with our muscle to do that. But it all starts here. So if we're sleep deprived and we're in a literal energy deficit within our brain, we are not able to command our muscles to do that stuff in the first place. So if creatine only served the muscles, then it wouldn't really help us. We'd just be stronger and sloppy. But in this case, we're stronger and not sloppy. Now, I do not recommend that you purposely deprive yourself of sleep just because you have creatine as a crutch. What you want to do, and this is my humble opinion, I don't take creatine daily, I don't dose it, I don't load it, okay? But I always have some creatine on hand so that if I need to, I'll take 2.5 grams. I don't like to take 5 grams because I feel like 5 grams I start holding water. That may not matter to you, but in the profession that I'm in, it matters. I like to stay lean, I like to stay dry because it's just a look that I go for. But if you go for a small amount, like 2.5 grams, you can get yourself that buffering of ATP and adenosine in the brain that allows the brain to stay awake and allows you to get by with less sleep so you can still get through your workouts. I would not recommend doing this as sort of an exogenous sort of intervention more than like 2 days per week, but use it. And it's highly researched and it's highly vetted out. Creatine is a very solid supplement. It's not just for building muscle. I'll see you tomorrow.